Chapter 39, Prophecy. Garasara. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Now. I really had hoped that this at least you might have spared me. Still, I have to admit that your reason for asking me to go all pontifical about prophecy is a good one. You want to chuck her out for the loafers that come cadging into your tavern de la Belle Sibylle, and waste your time with piffle about pyramids. What a game. So naturally you need a book of the rules, and a list of the classes of offensive people, whether prostitutes, policemen, or verminous persons. I quote from the regulations for secular pubs, who think the easiest of all possible refuges from their fear, see other letters, is reliance upon the mouldy mumblings of moth-eater mountebanks. Perhaps it will be best to begin by setting down the necessary conditions for a genuine prophecy. We shall find that most of the famous predictions are excluded without need of more specific examination. But, priority, please, as usual, for the etymology. Prophesy means forth speaking, more or less equal to inspired. It has nothing to do with foretelling the future, though it may do so, as it may do anything, being only the ravings of a poet, drunkard, or madman. You remember how Saul came upon a company of youths all prophesying away together to beat the hand, and joined the merry throng. So people said, is Saul also among the prophets? Meaning a man capable of the divine intoxication of love, song, eloquence, or whatever else enthusiastic might possess him. Men seized by the afflatus were found to be capable of extraordinary exploits, hence the condition was admired and envied by the average clod. Also, imitated by the average crook. For all that, I am going for once to yield to popular clamor, and use words in their popular sense. That seems to me, roughly this: prediction is a forecast based on reason, prophecy one which claims the warrant of magical powers. You agree? Then we can get on. 1. The prophecy must announce itself as such. We cannot have people picking up odds and ends which may be perfectly irrelevant, and insisting that they conceal forecasts. This excludes Great Pyramid lunatics. It would be quite simple to do the same sham calculations with the Empire State Building. When the architects protested, it is simple to reply, why, but of course. God was most careful not to let them know what they were really doing, or they would have died of fright. This argument was actually put forward by the Spiritists when Zanzig confessed that his music hall exploits were accomplished by means of a code. It is quite useless to get any sense whatever into the heads of these bigoted imbeciles. Here, A.C. Don't forget your best beloved Browning. In Mr. Sludge the Medium, the detected cheat, it was D.D. Home in real life, offers this silly subterfuge: why, when I cheat mean to cheat, do cheat, and am caught in the act, are you, or rather, am I sure o' the fact? There's verse again. But I'm inspired somehow, well then I'm not sure. I may be perhaps, free as a babe from cheating, how it began, my gift, no matter, what 'tis got to be in the end now, that's the question, answer that. Had I seen, perhaps, what hand was holding mine, leading me whither, I had died of fright, so I was made believe I led myself. 2. The date of the prophecy must antecede that of its fulfillment. The very greatest care must be taken to ensure this. When both dates are remote, as in the case of fulfilled biblical prophecies, this is often impossible. 3. The prophecy must be precise. This rules out cases where alternative verifications are possible. 4. The prophecy must be more than a reasonable calculation of probability. This rules out stuff like the burden of Nineveh 1 and the like. Incidentally, the burden of Damascus does not seem to have had much luck so far. By latest accounts, the old burg wasn't feeling too badly. We may also refer to the second advent, behold, I come quickly. 2. There have been quite a few false alarms to date. It began with Jesus himself, snapping off the disciples' head, if I will that he tarry till I come, what is that to thee? Well, somebody was disappointed. Mrs. Zanzig sat on the stage, blindfolded. Her husband wandered about the audience, taking one object or another from one or another of them, and asking her, ready? What is this? And this? This now? Right, what's this? And so on. They had worked out a list of some hundreds of questions to cover any probable article, or to spell its name, or give a number, as when asked the number of a watch or bus ticket, and so on. One evening at Cambridge, I was explaining this to a group of undergraduates. Being doubted, I offered to do the same trick with the help of one of them, a complete stranger. I only stipulated to 10 minutes alone with him to hypnotize him. Of course I won easily. They cut out one possible way of communication after another, but I always managed to exchange a few words with my medium or slip him a note, so as to have a new code not excluded by the latest precaution. 5. The verification must be simple, natural, unique and unmistakable. Forced and far-fetched explanations, distortions of cabalistic or other mathematical reasoning, are barred. 6. The prophecy itself must possess the complement of this precision. It must be so perfectly unintelligible at the time that the elucidation of the answer makes it certain that the prophet knew precisely the whole riddle. I feel that this condition is itself expressed in a somewhat oracular form. I will try to clarify by citing what I consider a perfect example. Perfect, I say, because the must is a little too strong. There are degrees of excellence. That stele they shall call the abomination of desolation. Count well its name, and it shall be to you as 718. Al 3, 19. The stele is that whose discovery culminated in the writing of the Book of the Law. Here the first part is still quite unintelligible to me. I have tried analysis of the original phrase in Scripture, 3 and nearly everything else, entirely in vain. One can see dimly how people, recognizing that stele as the talisman responsible for reducing half the cities of Europe to rubble, might very well make reference to those original prophecies. But, at the best, that's nothing to cable to a Taite about. Now the second part. This was even more baffling than the other. Count well its name? How can I? It never had a name. So I tried all sorts of experiments with 718. Shin, 300. The letter of spirit, with our key number 418, looks promising. Only one more pie crust. I kept attacking, off and on, for many a long year, got out all sorts of fantastic solutions, complex and confused. They simply shouted their derision at me. It was one glorious night in Sifil, too utterly superb to waste in sleep. I got up, I adored the stars and the moon, I reveled in the universe. Yet there was something pulling at me. It pulled eftsoons my body into my chair, and I found myself at this old riddle of 718. Half a dozen comic failures. But I felt that there was something on the way. Idly, I put down stele in the Greek, 52,4 and said, perhaps we can make a name out of the difference between that and 718. I jumped. 718 to 52 equals 666, my own name. Why, of course, quoth he, in glee, it is in fact the stele of 666, for it is the stele of Ankef Konsu, my name in those past days. Oh, no. Said something, that's not good enough. Count well its name the stele of Ankef Konsu, a name is something to which it answers, quite different from a title. That solution is clever, but it just won't do, because that stele never had a name. You lie. I shouted, as the full light broke through the mists of my mind. In these 3,000 years it has once, if only once, had a name, by invoking which you could bring it up before you. Its name is stele 666 inches in the catalogue of the museum at Bullock. A single simple hammer stroke, and the nail is driven home to the head. Compare this with the chaotic devices of the bilateral cipher maniacs, by the application of which it is easy to prove that Bernard Shaw wrote Rudyard Kipling. Or anything else. You pay your money, and you take your choice. 7. Another strong point is that the prophecy should on the surface mean something vague and plausible, and, interpreted, possess this same quality of unique accuracy. For instance, although it is not prediction, consider love is the law, love under will. Yes, that sounds very well, I dare say that is an excellent point of philosophy. But, well, anyone might say that. Oh, no. For when we use the Greek of the technical terms, we find love, and alpha, will, both of the value of 93, and these only two blossoms of the tree whose root is 31, and the entire numerical verbal system based thereupon organized with incredibly simple intricacy, well, that is a neohippus of an entirely different tint. It is no more the chance, if happy, statement of any smooth-tongued philosopher, but the evidence of, and the key to, an incalculably vast design. As well attribute the Riemann Christoffel tensor to the happy thought of some postprandial mathematician. Here is another case. Now then, this 2-in-1 letter moon symbol equals old style capital sigma sun symbol equals capital theta, is the third key to this law, and on the discovery of that fact, after years of constant seeking, what sudden splendors of truth, sacred as secret, blazed in the midnight of my mind. Observe now This circle squared in its failure is a key also. 5. Now I knew that in the value of the letters Alim, 6 the gods, the Jews had concealed a not quite correct value of the ratio of a circle's circumference to its diameter, to 4 places of decimals, 3.1415, nearer would be 3.1416. If I prefix Saki, 31 putting sun and moon conjoined, Set or Satan, before the old gods, I get 3.141593, correct to 6 places, 6 being my own number and that of Horus the sun. 7, and one more, this time an actual prediction. Here again is what might at first seem almost innovation! One cometh after him. Indeed. I suppose so. It fits anybody who discovers it or claims to have done so. Not one little bit. For when the time came, and the key was found, the finder's name in the order was, and had been from the moment of his admission as a probationer, Wakad, the Hebrew word for one. And he came after him in the precise technical sense, that he was in fact the next person to undertake the adventure of the abyss. I hope you are not getting the idea that my prophetic ambit is limited to these highfalutin metaphysical masterpieces of runic lore. In case you do, I now propose to break your 7 green withs that were never dried altogether, Delilah, for I shall keep my hair on. I shall go forth to war. From 1920 to 1923 my abode for a season was the house called the Horsel of the Abbey of Thelema that lieth upon Santa Barbara, overlooking the town of Telepolis, see Homer and Samuel Butler too, but called later by the Romans Cephaloidium, and now Cephal. The did I toil to expand my little part 3 of Book 4 to the portentous volume now more generally known as Magic in Theory and Practice. After numerous misadventures, it was published in 1928.8, I refer you to that book, page 96. One last word on this subject. There is a magical operation of maximum importance, the initiation of a new eon. When it becomes necessary to utter a word, the whole planet must be bathed in blood. Before man is ready to accept the law of Thelema, the great war must be fought. This bloody sacrifice is the critical point of the world ceremony of the proclamation of Horus, the crowned and conquering child, as Lord of the Aeon. The whole matter is prophesied in the Book of the Law itself. Let the student take note, and enter the ranks of the host of the Sunday. Note, this paragraph was written in the summer 1911, EV, just 3 years before its fulfillment. Second innings 38 EV, SQQ.9. It is a pity that I cannot prove my footnote, but this chapter 12 was part of the original MOS, advertised as to be published in 1912. You may take my word for it, for once. And in any case we have the prophecy of Bart Sable, the spirit of Mars, in the early summer of 1910 that wars involving the disaster of A. Turkey and B. Germany would be fought within 5 years. 10 See the New York World, December, 1914. We now proceed to Magic, page 112. But now observe how the question of the magical link arises. No matter how mighty the truth of Thelema, it cannot prevail unless it is applied to and by mankind. as long as the Book of the Law was in manuscript, it could only affect the small group amongst whom it was circulated. It had to be put into action by the magical operation of publishing it. When this was done, it was done without proper perfection. Its commands as to how the work ought to be done were not wholly obeyed. There were doubt and repugnance in Fra Perdurabo's mind, and they hampered his work. He was half-hearted. Yet, even so, the intrinsic power of the truth of the law and the impact of the publication were sufficient to shake the world so that a critical war broke out, and the minds of men were moved in a mysterious manner. The second blow was struck by the republication of the book in September 1913, and this time the might of this Magick burst out and caused a catastrophe to civilization. At this hour, the master Therian is concealed, collecting his forces for a final blow. When the Book of the Law and its comment is published with the forces of his whole will in perfect obedience to the instructions which have up to now been misunderstood or neglected, the result will be incalculably effective. The event will establish the kingdom of the crowned and conquering child over the whole earth, and all men shall bow to the law, which is love under will. This should be plain enough, and satisfactory. However, I thought it was time to draw public attention to these matters more emphatically. In fulfillment of my pledge given above, and of the instructions originally given to me by the masters, I got out the Equinox of the Gods at 6:22 a.m., December 22, 1937, EV, and, to fulfill my condition number 1, above, of a prophecy, as well as to establish the date, I got a reporter on the spot, with the result following. These names make news. Mixed bag of early birds. An Englishman, a Jew, an Indian, a Negro, a Malayan. No, it's not one of those saloon bad jokes, assembled on the embankment, by Cleopatra's Needle, soon after 6 a.m. yesterday. They were there to assist at the publication of a book by 62-year-old magician, Aleister Crowley. Publication occurred at 6:22 sharp, when the sun entered Capricornus. Crowley make a short speech, as the priest of the princes proclaimed the law of Thelema, handed copies of book to white, red, brown, black, yellow representatives. Representative of the black race was a dancing girl. Indian was a non-English speaking Bengali Muslim, who seemed rather puzzled by the whole business. Book contains message dictated to Crowley at Cairo in 1904 by Awos, a being whose nature he does not fully understand but who described himself as the minister of Hor or Pakrat, the Lord of Silence. Prospectus of book says it's been published 3 times before, adds, sinisterly, that first publication was 9 months before outbreak of Balkan War, second, 9 months before outbreak of World War, third, 9 months before outbreak of Sino-Japanese War. No coincidence, it says. The might of this Magick burst out and caused a catastrophe to civilization. Well, we'll see next September. It's a bit hard of you to wish another war on us, I said to Crowley. Oh, but if everyone will only do as I tell them to, he replied, the catastrophe can be averted. Somehow I fear they won't. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Then I issued a prospectus for the book, giving the facts as to previous publications and their results, and leaving blank a space after the 4th publication to wait the event. The first publication, 9 months before the outbreak of the Balkan War, which broke up the Near East. When this was done, it was done without proper perfection. Its commands as to how the work ought to be done were not wholly obeyed. Yet, even so, the intrinsic power of the truth of the law and the impact of publication were sufficient to shake the world, so that a critical war broke out, and the minds of men were moved in a mysterious manner. The second publication, 9 months before the outbreak of the World War, which broke up the West. The second blow was struck by the republication of the book in September, 1913, and this time caused a catastrophe to civilization. At this hour, the master Therian is concealed, collecting his forces for a final blow. When the Book of the Law and its comment is published, in perfect obedience to the instruction, the result will be incalculably effective. The event will establish the kingdom of the crowned and conquering child over the whole earth, and all men shall bow to the law, which is love under will. The third publication, 9 months before the outbreak of the Sino-Japanese War, which is breaking up the Far East. The fourth publication, 6:22 a.m., December 22, 1937, EV. This series of actions complies perfectly with the condition of prophecy. 9 months elapsed, and I was able to overprint, also to reprint, enlarged to 4 pages my remaining prospectuses in red ink. As follows: 9 months before the betrayal, which stripped Britain of the last rags of honor, prestige and security, and will break up civilization. I have always maintained that Munich marked the true outbreak of the war, because Hitler's rape of Czechoslovakia, however justifiable, was irreconcilably incompatible with our foreign policy, and Munich is 9 months to a day after my gesture. This then I consider a completely documented case of prophecy. And I shall be a completely documented case of brain fag unless I shut up now. Love is the law, love under will. Yours fraternally, 666.